Some people disappear, and it makes the news right away. Sirens, social media posts, everyone talking about it. Other times, someone just vanishes quietly. No warning, no clue, and the questions just hang there, unanswered for years. That's what happened in March 2017 with Tina Satchwell. She was 45, lived in the small coastal town of Youghal in Ireland, and disappeared from her own home. Married, known in the community, loved by her family, and then, one ordinary morning, she was gone. No goodbye, no note, no sign of where she had gone. For 6 years, nobody knew what happened. Investigators combed the town, retraced her last steps, talked to everyone who knew her, but they found nothing. No CCTV footage, no activity on her phone or bank accounts. Nothing, just silence. Then, in 2023, everything changed. The truth came out, not somewhere far away, not hidden in the woods, but right under everyone's noses, in the home she had lived in all those years. Tina's story isn't just about someone disappearing. It's about trust, secrecy, and the reminder that sometimes the answers are closer than we ever imagine. This is her story. What happened, how it was investigated, and the questions that still linger for the people who loved her. Before she became a name in the news or a mystery everyone talked about, Tina Satchwell was just Tina, a familiar face in Youghal, a woman with routines, habits, and a life that felt steady and ordinary. She was born in November 1972 and grew up close to her family. People who knew her described her as gentle, thoughtful, and caring in quiet ways, small gestures rather than big displays of affection. She liked clothes, enjoyed fashion, and took pleasure in finding something beautiful and making it her own. Tina wasn't someone who needed attention. She liked comfort, familiarity, and the simple rhythm of everyday life. For more than 20 years, that rhythm revolved around her marriage to Richard Satchwell. They'd been together since they were young, and eventually settled into a modest terraced house on Grattan Street in Youghal. It was the kind of street where neighbors noticed if curtains stayed closed too long. Routines mattered. They didn't have children, but they shared their home with 2 dogs, companions that added life to the house and were part of their daily routine. From the outside, the Satchwell home seemed ordinary, and that mattered. There were no warning signs, no public arguments, no drama that hinted at trouble. To friends and family, Tina seemed grounded. She stayed in touch, made plans, showed up, a person you could rely on. Which is why what happened next made no sense at all. In the days before she disappeared, Tina went about her life as usual. On Sunday, March 19, 2017, she went to a car boot sale in Carricktwohill. Just a normal weekend outing, the kind of thing people do without thinking twice. It would be the last time anyone saw her in public. The next day, Monday, March 20th, started like any other. No alarms were raised, nothing seemed out of place. No one had any idea it would be the last day anyone would see Tina alive. She left no notes, no packed bags, no explanation. At first, people assumed she was just out for the day. Hours passed, then days, and slowly the weight of her absence began to sink in. Because Tina didn't just vanish without telling anyone. She wasn't impulsive, and she wasn't reckless. She certainly wasn't the kind of person to walk away from her life without leaving a trace. As concern grew, one question kept coming back, quietly at first, then louder over time. Where was Tina Satchwell, and why had she disappeared so completely? What no one realized then was that the answer wasn't somewhere far away. It wasn't across a border or waiting to be found in some distant place. It was already there, waiting, silent, and for years unseen. Monday, March 20th, 2017. It was just another spring morning in Youghal. Shops opened, cars moved along the narrow streets, and life went on like any other weekday, unaware that something permanent was about to happen inside a quiet house on Grattan Street. According to later accounts, Tina Satchwell was at home that morning. There were no signs of distress, no arguments, no urgent plans. Just an ordinary day continuing as it always had. Around 10 a.m., Richard Satchwell left the house. He said he was heading to Dungarvan, a little over an hour away, for an errand. Nothing unusual about the trip, no rush, no sense that it was final. When he returned about 2 hours later, Tina was gone. The house was quiet, too quiet. Her coat was still there. Her personal items hadn't been touched. Nothing suggested she had packed or planned to leave. At first, nobody panicked. People don't always worry when someone steps out unexpectedly. You assume they'll be back soon. Hours pass. Explanations form. Life seems normal. But as the hours stretched into days, a sense that something wasn't right started to take hold. 4 days later, on March 24th, Tina was officially reported missing. At first, the story given to Garde was simple. She had gone to clear her head, that she was upset, needed space, maybe staying with relatives abroad. But that explanation didn't hold up for long. Tina didn't have her passport. There were no travel records, no messages sent, no phone activity, no withdrawals from her bank. If she had chosen to leave, she left nothing to indicate it. And there was something else that made the disappearance even stranger. No one could say for certain when Tina was last seen inside the house. Neighbors didn't see her leave. CCTV didn't capture her stepping out the door. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Once Tina Satchwell was officially reported missing, the process of a missing person investigation began in earnest. Garda in East Cork started with the basics, establishing a timeline, retracing her last confirmed movements, and speaking to everyone who might have noticed something unusual. Friends, neighbors, family members, anyone who could provide a clue. At first, investigators had to consider all possibilities. Adults do sometimes leave voluntarily. Stress, personal struggles, the need for space, all of that had to be looked at. They searched for signs that Tina might have chosen to go somewhere quietly, even if only temporarily. But the facts didn't support that theory. Her phone showed no activity after the day she disappeared. Her bank accounts were untouched. No emails, no social media messages, no digital footprint at all. If she had left by choice, she left behind complete silence. Search efforts quickly expanded. Garda followed up on reported sightings. Some seemed credible, most did not. They reviewed CCTV footage from streets, shops, and transport hubs around Yohol. They checked ferry ports, airports, and border crossings. Nothing. As days became weeks, volunteers joined the search. Posters with Tina's face appeared in shop windows and community boards. Appeals were broadcast on radio and television. Her disappearance became something people in the town and beyond talked about. And still, every lead came to nothing. Inside the Satchwell home, there were no obvious signs of foul play, no struggle, no broken furniture, no visible blood, no immediate indication that anything violent had occurred. But absence can be just as telling as presence. There were no packed bags, no missing clothes, no reason for her to leave without a word. Without physical evidence, the case remained officially classified as a missing person investigation. During this time, Richard Satchwell spoke publicly, appealing for Tina to come home. He said she might be emotionally upset, that she needed time away, and asked anyone with information to contact Garda. To the public, he seemed cooperative, but privately, unease began to grow. Friends and family struggled to imagine Tina leaving of her own accord. She wasn't someone who vanished without checking in, without explanation, without reassurance. And the hardest truth for investigators, despite searches, appeals, and public attention, Tina had not been seen anywhere. Not once. As the first year passed, hope began to thin. By the second year, silence had settled in. Tina Satchwell wasn't just missing anymore. She was becoming one of Ireland's unresolved cases. A name spoken quietly, a story with no ending. Behind the scenes, Gardaí started asking tougher questions. They revisited earlier statements, compared timelines, and re-examined details that had once seemed insignificant. Because when someone disappears without a trace and stays gone, the truth often isn't far away. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the focus of the investigation began to change. As months turned into years, Tina Satchwell's disappearance settled into an uncomfortable stillness. Searches slowed, media coverage grew less frequent, public appeals, once urgent, quieted. This is how cold cases form. Not all at once, but slowly, almost imperceptibly. For Tina's family, time didn't make things easier. If anything, it made the absence sharper. Birthdays came and went, holidays passed. Each one reminded them of the same painful question. Where is she? For Garda, the case never closed. But it changed. By the second and third years, investigators faced a harsh reality. There was still no evidence that Tina had left Ireland or even Youghal after March 20th, 2017. No confirmed sightings, no bank activity, no messages, no calls, no digital trace. For someone presumed alive, Tina had left behind complete silence. Quietly, the case was reclassified. It was no longer just a missing person inquiry. It became a suspected unlawful killing. That shift changed everything. Once investigators started working under the assumption that Tina hadn't left voluntarily, the focus tightened. The circle shrank. Attention turned inward, to routines, relationships, and the last place she was known to be. Her home. In the years that followed, Garda went back over everything. Earlier statements were re-examined, interviews were re-listened to, timelines were compared. Small inconsistencies, once overlooked, began to stand out. Details that seemed minor before now mattered. Explanations that had been accepted early on no longer made sense. Investigators also looked closely at changes made to the house on Grattan Street after Tina disappeared. Renovations, small alterations, nothing dramatic, but enough to raise questions when seen in a new light. Why now? Why here? Progress was slow. Years passed. By 2020, Tina had been missing for over 3 years. To the public, the case felt frozen, but behind the scenes, it was quietly being rebuilt. A full review of the investigation was carried out. Fresh eyes examined old material, new teams looked at the facts without the assumptions of the past. And then came the realization that changed everything. The truth wasn't somewhere far away, not in the countryside, not abroad, not in some distant location waiting to be discovered. It was at the very center of the story, in the place investigators had already walked through multiple times, the house. By 2023, Garda believed they were close enough to act. When they returned to Grattan Street with purpose, they weren't searching for Tina to come home anymore. They were searching for the truth. What they found would end 6 years of uncertainty and begin a much darker chapter. By the time Garda returned to the Grattan Street house in 2023, this was no ordinary visit. 6 years had passed since Tina Satchwell was last seen. 6 years of unanswered questions. 6 years of a case that refused to rest. And now, investigators thought the answers might be closer than anyone had imagined. This time, the house was treated differently. Specialist teams arrived. The street was cordoned off. For neighbors who had lived alongside the mystery for years, the scene was unsettling. A quiet reminder that the past hadn't finished with them yet. Inside, Garda worked slowly and deliberately. This wasn't a search driven by hope or panic. It was guided by careful review, by everything investigators had learned, reconsidered, and quietly questioned over time. They focused on structural changes made to the property after Tina disappeared. Areas that once seemed ordinary were now examined with precise forensic attention. Then, beneath the stairs, something caught their eye. The space was small, confined, easy to overlook. As the search continued, layers of material were removed. Concrete gave way to earth. And then, the discovery that changed everything: human remains. The remains were later formally identified as Tina Satchwell. For 6 years she had been there, hidden beneath the home she had lived in, beneath stairs she would have passed every day, beneath a part of the house so ordinary that no one had thought to question it. The news sent shockwaves through Youghal. Neighbors struggled to process the reality. Tina had never left. She hadn't started a new life. The truth had been buried right at the center of the story from the very beginning. For her family, the discovery was both devastating and clarifying. After years of uncertainty, they finally had an answer to the most painful question. Where was Tina? But that answer raised even more questions. How long had she been there? What happened inside that house? And how had it gone unnoticed for so long? The investigation moved quickly. Within days, Richard Satchwell was arrested in connection with Tina's death. He was questioned, released, and then rearrested as the case escalated from a long-term missing person investigation to a confirmed homicide. What had once been a missing person case was now a murder investigation. With Tina's remains found, the focus narrowed completely on the timeline, the house, and the man who had shared that space with her. For years, the story of Tina Satchwell had been defined by absence. Now, it was defined by a truth that could not be ignored. With the discovery beneath the stairs, the investigation's direction became clear. What had started as a disappearance filled with uncertainty was now a homicide inquiry, anchored in evidence. Evidence that tied Tina Satchwell not to some faraway place, but to the home she had never left. Gardaí moved quickly, but carefully. Richard Satchwell was arrested and questioned in the days after the discovery. He had spoken to investigators many times over the years, about the day Tina disappeared, about their relationship, and about his belief that she had left on her own. Now, every statement was being examined line by line. Investigators compared earlier accounts with later ones. They looked for what stayed consistent and what quietly shifted over time. Timelines changed, emphasis shifted. Some details appeared, disappeared, and reappeared in different forms. What emerged wasn't a single clear story. It was several versions of events. And that mattered, because in cases like this, the truth often shows up not in what's said confidently, but in what can't be kept consistent. Meanwhile, forensic experts examined the remains found under the stairs. Time had erased many answers. A precise cause of death couldn't be determined, but the location itself, hidden, enclosed, deliberately concealed, spoke volumes. Tina hadn't ended up there by accident. She hadn't gone there on her own. The house became a key piece of evidence. Investigators scrutinized renovation work done after Tina disappeared. New concrete, small alterations, nothing dramatic, but enough to raise questions about timing and intent. Why make these changes? Why then? Each answer only led to more questions. Gardaí built the case methodically. Without a clear cause of death, the investigation relied on circumstantial evidence, timelines, behavior, inconsistencies, and logical deduction. But circumstantial didn't mean weak. It meant the story had to make sense as a whole. In court, jurors would be asked to consider not just what happened, but what didn't. No sightings, no communication, no trace of Tina outside the house after that morning in March. And one unavoidable fact, she was found buried inside her own home. By the time the case reached trial, the narrative had shifted entirely. This wasn't about whether Tina had left voluntarily. It was about how long the truth had been hidden. And why? For Tina's family, the process was grueling. Every detail reopened old wounds. Every day in court was a reminder that even answers can bring their own pain. As testimony unfolded, the full picture remained incomplete, but compelling enough for a jury to act. In 2025, Richard Satchwell was found guilty of Tina's murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The verdict marked the end of a long legal journey, but it didn't bring full clarity. Even with a conviction, some questions remained, locked away with the years and the silence that had surrounded Tina's disappearance. By the time the case went before a jury, it was clear this wouldn't be a trial defined by a single moment or a neat forensic answer. There was no eyewitness, no full confession, no exact cause of death that could be pinpointed. Instead, the case rested on something more complex, a web of evidence built over years, shaped as much by what was found as by what was never found. At the center of it all was the house on Grattan Street. Tina Satchwell's remains had been hidden beneath the stairs, covered and concealed in a way that suggested deliberate action. This wasn't an accidental or open space. It was enclosed, altered, integrated into the structure of the home itself. For the jury, that fact alone carried weight. If Tina had left voluntarily on March 20th, 2017, as had been suggested early on, there was no explanation for how she ended up buried inside her own house. The prosecution guided jurors carefully through the timeline. They returned again and again to the last confirmed sighting of Tina at the car boot sale the day before she disappeared. Witnesses described her as calm, normal, not distressed, not preparing to vanish. Then came the morning she disappeared. A narrow window of time in which she was last known to be alive inside the house. No one saw her leave. No camera captured her. No record placed her anywhere else. From that moment on, Tina left no trace in the outside world. No phone activity, no bank withdrawals, no documents missing from the home. For jurors, the absence itself became evidence. The defense highlighted the lack of a confirmed cause of death, the passage of time, and the limits of forensic science. They suggested alternative explanations and emphasized uncertainty. But uncertainty didn't erase the facts. The jury was asked to consider not each piece of evidence in isolation, but how it all fit together. A woman disappears. she is never seen again. She leaves behind everything she would need to live. Years later, she is found concealed within her own home. The prosecution also drew attention to inconsistencies in earlier statements, subtle shifts in detail, changes in explanations, timelines that didn't perfectly align. These weren't dramatic contradictions, but the kind that appear only when examined closely, repeatedly, over time. And then there was motive. Not a single explosive event, but a quiet undercurrent. Tension, strain, small moments that seemed ordinary on their own, but gained meaning in light of what ultimately happened. The jury deliberated with all of this in mind. They weren't asked to solve every mystery. They weren't asked to reconstruct every second of Tina's final hours. They were asked one question: did the evidence taken together prove beyond reasonable doubt that Tina Satchwell was murdered? In May 2025, they answered yes. The verdict gave Tina's family what they had lived without for years: the knowledge that her disappearance wasn't a mystery of choice or chance, but the result of a crime hidden in silence. Even with a guilty verdict, though, the case wasn't fully complete. Some truths had been lost to time. Some questions would never be fully answered. The conviction of Richard Satchwell brought legal closure, but for Tina's family and the community of U-Haul, the story was far from over. For 6 years, her family had lived with uncertainty, each day marked by the absence of a woman they loved. The discovery of her remains finally answered the most pressing question: where was she? But not the how or the why. Birthdays, holidays, even ordinary routines were forever changed by her disappearance. The community, too, had to come to terms with the truth. A quiet, familiar neighborhood had hidden a tragedy beneath its surface. A reminder that even ordinary places can conceal extraordinary secrets. Friends and neighbors remembered Tina as warm, kind, and quietly present in the lives around her. A person, not just a story in a case file. For investigators, the case reinforced the value of patience and persistence. Years of revisiting statements, reviewing old evidence, and re-examining the home finally produced answers that had eluded everyone for so long. Yet even with a conviction, some questions remain. What really happened in Tina's final hours? Could earlier attention to subtle details have made a difference? How many other disappearances hide truths yet to be uncovered? Tina Satchwell's story is a reminder of the fragility of certainty, the weight of absence, and the human need to seek truth, no matter how deeply it is buried. Her life, her loss, and the questions that linger ensure she will not be forgotten. If you found this story meaningful, join our community by subscribing and turning on notifications. Every subscriber helps us continue sharing stories that matter.